Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us for another episode of The Warehouse. I'm your host, Josh Johnson, and like always, we are joined with an incredible guest that are going to give us an incredible conversation. We have joining us Victoria Bridenstine, who is one of the vice presidents, of the Levitt Family Foundation, and our very own Kathleen Spihar, who's the executive director of COCA. Thank you guys both for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
Absolutely. So, Victoria, first of all, thank you for coming all the way from LA. You should know that for the past 6 months, 7 months, the city has been on fire with news in one way or another that we may receive the Levitt Amp Music Grant, and then once we received it, the city was on fire for a whole nother reason. It is going to bring a lot of life to Tallahassee. It's going to decorate our streets in a way that is only beneficial. And so first of all, thank you for helping to lead the charge and govern an organization that is just going to give so much to us.
Well, thank you for that. But I always say thank you to the community because it really was the community that brought this grant to Tallahassee. A part of the application process was the voting. And so you all rallied together and you voted for this application, for this grant. And so that is really the exciting part. That means that there's already community buy-in. And so we're excited to be a partner, and we're excited to see what happens over the next 3 years. Experience some really great music, but then also some really great collaborations with partner organizations and activating the public space. And so it's an exciting time.
You know, you just said something in your last answer that's a perfect segue to one of the things that I was going to mention next. There are certain goals or pillars of the Levitt Family Foundation, specifically through the grants that it distributes. And one of those that I thought was so incredible, I'm going to go through all three, but using underserved public spaces or underused public spaces, I should say. I thought that is such an incredible angle because any city you go to, any town you go to, there is a space that is perfect for something that's not being used for that. Talk to us a little bit about how rewarding the work has been to see communities converge in spaces that they don't even use all the time in their own backyards.
Yeah, well, at their best, public spaces are places where everyone should feel welcome to come and to attend and to use. And there are so many public spaces across the country that are barely used. Sure. But we're also going through something that is really damaging to our communities, and that's isolation and loneliness. But if we have these public spaces that are activated with the arts or with music or other programming, then that brings people together, and it touches on so many things. It touches on wellness, it touches on health, it touches on joy. So that is what's exciting for us to see these public spaces activated. We say that we're building community through music. So music is the starting place. But then these public spaces, it starts there, and then it has the ripple effect all throughout your towns and your cities across the country. And so it's really exciting. And I feel very privileged to be a part of that and to partner with communities that they're seeing this in their community. They're seeing that there's a space that's not activated, that actually can be used, and a space that can bring folks together, a space that can affect the economy, a space that can affect health and wellness, a space that really might have a history, but it can be reclaimed. So it's really rewarding and awesome.
Before I get into the partnership that you kind of spoke about between you all and COCA and broader the city, you brought up one of the favorite words of this programming, which is inclusivity. You know, art and culture are the greatest things in the world, if I get to tell the story. But often one of our linchpins is the fact that we are sometimes exclusive for whatever reason, whether it's ticket sales or whether it's because, it's a subjective sport and not an objective sport. The inclusivity that you talk about, do you get to see that inclusivity in real time with these projects, or is it something that you see in hindsight, or is it something that undergirds the very work that you do, or all three?
Well, we see it in real time
Mm.
when there's intentional outreach, when there's intentionality behind it. And so, yes, sometimes we see that there are wonderful nonprofits that, they have a reputation. And when they put on an event, everyone knows that, it's going to be wonderful, but they're putting it on in isolation. It's their thing. We see, though, the greatest impact when you are actually partnering and collaborating with everyone and different organizations within your community. When you're partnering and collaborating with different organizations and people and leaders and like nonprofits and businesses and social groups, and that means that it's going to be reflective of your community, and it really does. It takes on a whole new word of that, a whole new meaning of inclusivity. It really just takes on like pride of place. And then also, it takes on, I'm spending time with folks that I otherwise may not spend time with. I might not cross paths with that person normally. But when it's done with intention, yeah, we see that inclusivity.
These events turn into little passports. They allow people to take trips to places that they might have otherwise not gone. That was such a splendid answer. In that answer, you said that you get to partner with organizations that have incredible reputations. I may be biased as a Tallahassee boy, but one of those organizations joins us today. COCA, the Council on Culture and Arts, is so much to this community and broader than that. In some ways, a lifeline, in some ways, an ally. Kathleen, talk to me a little bit. I know that this idea wasn't birthed through COCA, but as far as Tallahassee is concerned, it was because you guys were the vehicle that bought us the opportunity to get the Levitt Grant. And so what did that look like? How did we find out about the Levitt Grant? How did we shoot for it? And then what happened in the subsequent activity?
Well, I noticed how the Levitt Family Foundation is doing this fantastic work throughout the country with mid-sized and smaller cities especially. Yeah. And, there's not always an investment from a national funder in mid-sized and smaller cities, but Levitt has taken that on. That's attracted my attention. Then I also found out about Levitt through my contacts through what I call the Music Cities Initiative. Mm-hmm. And that's something, when I first came to town a few years ago, I had developed some relationships with an organization that also goes around the country and basically helps build music cities. So do you have musicians in town? Do you have venues? Do you have all the ingredients to build up your music community? And when I came to Tallahassee, and I've known about Tallahassee a long time before that, I saw all those ingredients that were in place. All we need to do is put them all together. So started with Music Cities, and the folks that I met through the Music Cities kind of introduced me to some of the ways that Music Cities grow. And so I noticed all the great work that Levitt was doing. And I said, I just need to get to know these funders better. And because I wanted to see how they were working with other cities to say what kind of opportunities could happen with Tallahassee. So it started actually a few years ago, and Levitt's at every one of these Music City conferences, and I just started to get to know other staff members there. And then this opportunity came forward for our city to jump into this opportunity to this contest for funding through Levitt. And I talked to our partners. We have lots of partners in the area, but we talked specifically to our partners at the Downtown Improvement Authority because of the idea of bringing people into places that exist and have been I brought them into places that have been engaged in placemaking, but what we're talking about here is placekeeping. And so when we looked at what are the areas of the Levitt Family Foundation, what are the different programs that we could potentially activate, we decided that Levitt AMP was the best fit for this community, and we being ourselves in the Downtown Improvement Authority. So we worked together on putting a grant in, and then as Victoria talked about, the community got behind this idea, and it has just burst open from there, all the way through a grant to putting this concert series, Levitt AMP Tallahassee, Music Under the Oaks, on its feet, and then launching that program on April 9th.
Great answer. And you brought up, you guys are just giving me the greatest segues ever. You brought up in your last answer, small to mid-sized cities. So I'm an art and culture nerd, and I know I don't look like a nerd. I know I look like a Disney prince, but I am. You weren't supposed to laugh at that. Anyways, I am a nerd, and getting in the weeds on this thing, I don't know if either of you have ever heard of what they call blue dot fever, but if you haven't, it is the phenomena that's kind of sweeping the country right now, where so many huge acts are going and touring in these large cities, and when they go on the ticket master or whatever the avenue is to see the tickets, there's so many blue dots, which means empty seats, because these cities are inundated with art and culture every day of the week, and it's appearing that people have options, and with options, sometimes people win and sometimes people lose. It seems like the mid to smaller cities don't have these same problems. There's such a hunger and a thirst for live music and live eventing that we really not only are privileged to have these opportunities, but carry that football down the field every time. Is working with mid-size and small cities something that the Levitt Family Foundation wants to do more of to kind of spread the wings on that type of programming?
Yes, this program is growing tremendously. We're currently in over 60 small towns and mid-sized cities across the country, and that is something that's just going to continue to grow. Also, what's really interesting about this program is that all Levitt concerts are free. So while your city might have access to the arts, you might not have as much access to high-level artists who are performing at the concert. That's free for folks to attend. Now, the artists are always paid. We are an artist-friendly organization, so artists are always paid, but the concerts are always free. So even if you have wonderful programming in different squares, or maybe there's paid performances happening around town, the free aspect of it isn't always there. And so this is a really great opportunity for folks from all generations to be able to come together and enjoy the concert. We are definitely growing. We are a spin-down foundation, and what that means is by 2041, our doors are going to be closing. But before then, between now and then, we're ramping up our spending, and we really do believe that every town, every city should actually have music in their public spaces. And so we're beginning to not only fund more Levitt AMP, Levitt Vibe, Levitt Block music series across the country, but we're also thinking about sustainable partnerships. So when we walk away, there are local governments that are invested and they want to keep this going. So yes.
Let me say something. It's almost like we rehearsed this interview before. I had never heard the terminology spin down organization. I knew the concept, but I had never heard it called that. As you were speaking about the 60 cities and the 60 places, just for this particular grant through the Levitt Family Foundation, I was thinking these people are building a legacy. Every one of these places that they touch now not only knows the name Levitt, but also knows the blessings and the benefits of something like Levitt. And to then find out that you guys are an organization that will not exist into perpetuity, it is almost like a death, preparing these communities long after Levitt is gone, which actually makes it that much more valiant. My question is, in the Levitt page, it says something about helping cities find their own unique identities. Tallahassee's the greatest place on planet Earth, but some people say we struggle with identity. Are we a college town, or are we a this, or are we that? How important is identity for a place?
Well, I would say that we're not helping you find your identity. Every Levitt community has its own identity. And so while we provide structure for the music series, each music series really looks and feels like the place it is in. And so again, it's about intentionality. And so as you are continuing to grow and develop your music series, and it's wonderful that we're a multi-year funder. So the first year, you're just now trying to get your footing. Second year, third year, you start to ramp up and you start to realize some of the areas that you can grow and further develop. And as you're doing that, you're actually communicating and partnering and building relationships with different groups in your community to again make this reflective of your city. And so we focus more on providing structure for because a lot of our grantees have never put on a concert series before. What they have done is they've done community events, and so they know how to plan community events, but they might not know how to put on concerts with touring acts and negotiating contracts and really making it feel and look like a community event. Excuse me. Based on our experience, we provide tools and resources. We're more than a funder that gives grants. We provide additional support and tools and resources ongoing. And one of the reasons that I'm here actually is it's not just to see that the funds are being used at the concert. No, because we're in partnership, I'm actually speaking to the different partners who are helping bring this concert series to life. I'm actually learning more about Tallahassee. I'm learning about some of the wonderful things about Tallahassee, but then also learning about some of the challenges that's happening. And then I'm thinking, how might we better support our partner in Tallahassee? And so it's not about, helping you necessarily find that your identity, but it is helping you tap into what you already have.
Sure. So Kathleen, you can go into this as deep or as shallow as you want to. But I will preface it by saying the fact that you guys are equipping other organizations that are in these places to not only carry on the legacy of Levitt's work, but to carry on the legacy of their own work is important. Nelson Mandela, who's one of my favorite people, he has this line that says something akin to the greatest allies aren't just shoulders to cry on, but people who give the fuel for these missions to keep going. And COCA has been one of those fuel givers for so much art and so much culture in this community. And very recently, they have been put in a situation where things could change for COCA. And I'll let Kathleen talk a bit about that. But before I do, I would want everybody at home to know that as an art and culture person here, when the roads closed in front of our preeminent art district, COCA was there. 2 tornadoes that ravaged our livelihoods, COCA was there. When the governor zeroed out the budget and we didn't know what we were going to do, COCA was there. When there was public investment conversations about deprivatizing that art park and making it a public investment, COCA was there. And because COCA's here and because your organization is helping organizations like COCA, Kathleen, talk to me about how important it is to do just what she said, to not find our identity, but to maintain, facilitate, and expose parts of it that we might not have known were here before.
Well, we found each other, too, in partnership, I think, at the perfect time. And we understand and appreciate what legacy means to a community. And this community has such deep roots in creativity and history, in innovation through creativity and passion. passion for the geography of this area, passion for the stories that everyone wants to tell. So what I look at is what's the architecture that needs to be behind this in order to make sure that moves forward and carry forward. Partnerships, new partnerships especially, like we're talking about with Levitt, where we're on the same page about what needs to happen, the investment in place, how important that is, and carrying this forward to what I call the Levitt legacy, kind of building on that idea, right, that those are some building blocks and how we can make that happen more for our community in Tallahassee. And the building blocks that we want that COCA has been able to put down for more than 40 years have stabilized the creative community in many, many ways. But when you go above that, those winds, like those hurricane winds, those keep a-blowing, don't they?
Absolutely.
And so we've been very fortunate to have city and county partnership for over 40 years in arts and culture, and especially through this agency work. And that has inspired us to make sure that different parts of the community are able to build themselves and sustain themselves as much as possible through these creative and innovative initiatives. Now, the building has definitely happened. What has been happening recently is the question of sustainability, and that's where COCA has really leaned in. You mentioned some possibilities or you mentioned some things that we actually have done, and so that's been able to, for us, connect our community with new resources. Like when the pandemic hit, we were able to connect with some different sustainable resources through federal government and through state government and so on, and some stimulus. We were able to connect through the tornadoes with FEMA. These are ways that we were able to open up resources for the artists and the creative community, because we validated that art and artistry is an actual profession, that it is important to a community to support these businesses and nonprofits and individuals that are building and sustaining creativity and creative practices here in the community.
Perfect. Can I ask, we'll be wrapping up here soon, and so I have a question for each of you, and you can take it however you want. What is the background of the Levitt Family Foundation? What did it spawn from? What is its genesis?
It's a great story. We only have a little bit of time, but it came from Mortimer. He is Mortimer Levitt, which is a wonderful name. He's an immigrant who grew up in New York, and his father worked at Coney Island, and because they didn't have much money. He used to go with his father to work, but he couldn't actually go in to see the performances taking place. And when he developed his own clothing, the customs shop. It was a customs menwear shop, and he earned wealth through that. And then he also went into commercial real estate. When he earned his wealth, he supported the arts. And he and his wife, Mimi Levitt, they had a summer home in Westport, Connecticut. And Westport was doing a fundraiser for a venue space for free concerts. And they were the highest donors for that venue space. And so the community got together and they decided they were going to name it the Levitt Pavilion. And so that is how the pavilions kind of started, because Mortimer and Mimi, they actually saw a lot of value in this. And he thought this should happen elsewhere. This should happen everywhere. And so Mortimer was pretty much the push behind it. And then his daughter, Liz Levitt, began to work with him. And it was through Liz's work that it really began to grow. And so Liz was our board president for quite some time. It was really because of Liz's support and support for it that we as a foundation, the foundation team, was able to really develop it. And unfortunately, Liz is no longer with us. But for years, we were the Mortimer and Mimi Levitt Foundation. But because of Liz's contribution and her brother's contributions to this, we've changed our name to the Levitt Family Foundation to recognize everyone. But it was through that we began, and because of the impact that we've seen across the country, we continue to grow.
I love that. I love that. And Kathleen, really quick before I close out, what will be the mechanics for the concert series that's coming to town? Is it something like 21 shows over the course of a certain amount of time?
So this is the first of 3 years, and we have 8 concerts per year. We also have an opportunity because Levitt Foundation is also I call it an incentive-based foundation. So we have some opportunities to earn some additional funding through other initiatives, through a hashtag Music Moves initiative, and if we decide to do some additional series concerts, we might be able to add those in if we can also use the Levitt Foundation funding to leverage other funding for the series. So you come to a Levitt concert this summer, you'll see that there's a hashtag Music Moves. That's one way to help us earn some additional leveraging. There's also ways to donate. So we are continuing to look at expanding this series next year, the year after.
Got you. In closing, I will say one of the themes that came up today was the Levitt legacy. And as far as Tallahassee is concerned, we are so happy that we now get to be a part of that Levitt legacy. Another theme was family. We are so proud that we get to be a part of the Levitt family. And as the old adage goes, love it or leave it. From now on in Tallahassee, we say Levitt or leave it. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of The Warehouse. See you next time. Bye-bye.